Today I'm exposing how much I spend on my business as an influencer/content creator. In a recent video, I shared that last year I made over $100,000, and now it's time to talk about the expenses that, depending on if you are a cup half full or half empty type of person, either helped me make that money or counts against it. And I just want to say I was dreading making this video. Not because I didn't want to share the information, because as you know, we're team transparency around here, but because I am horribly unorganized. My expenses were not readily available in a nice little spreadsheet as they should have been. Instead, they were scattered across multiple email inboxes, too many folders, and a bunch of random receipts. I don't know why I do this to myself every single year. But here we are. I have scrounged everything together, calculated it all up, gagged a little at the total of some of the numbers, all for you guys. And I've also dug a little bit into my past so I can share how my expenses have evolved as I've moved from hobbyist to full-time creator. Hopefully to assure you that you do not need to spend a lot of money to do this thing. But before we dive in, I think we need to address the weird way that the general public perceives business expenses. Whenever creators come online and share their income, there is always this inevitable tidal wave of people saying, "But what is your net? How much did you have to spend to make all that? What about taxes?" Like tax brackets aren't publicly available information. And these comments are often made as if sharing your gross income is inherently deceptive. I've mentioned this before, but when we talk about traditional jobs and their salaries, we're always talking about income before deductions. There usually aren't follow-up questions like, how much do you spend on your commute to get to work? Or if you work at home, how much are you spending on your internet? And I think this demand for self-employed people to share their net income comes from the assumption that business expenses cut severely into the grand total of an individual's income. That the person had to spend a lot in order to earn a lot on paper. And I think that this idea is a bit of a carryover from product-based businesses where you have to buy and carry a lot of inventory, or even brick and mortars where overhead is just incredibly high. Or perhaps this distrust of gross income reporting comes from course sellers and coaching gurus on the internet. The people who spend hundreds of $1,000s on Facebook ads that say they can teach you how to make $100,000, but you pay for their course and the advice is to spend hundreds of $1,000s that you don't have on Facebook ads. If you've seen a lot of that, or maybe you've been scammed by somebody doing that, I definitely understand where the skepticism comes in. But as a more traditional influencer, content creator, blogger, yes, expenses are a cost of doing business, but they aren't tied as directly to your business in the sense that for every $100 you make, you had to spend 30. There's not the same type of profit margins going on. I more see expenses as things that I have the privilege of investing in to legitimize, improve, scale my business. Like, I love photography and gear and playing with new softwares that help me do my job better. How cool is it that I get to buy these things and then write them off, subtracting them from my overall income so that I end up owing the government a little less money. Not to mention that as an influencer, I can also expense things that the general public might see as like really frivolous, but do actually help me do my job better or enable me to create more cool content, which is my job. I'm not going to dig too much into that category in this video because I can't bring myself to go through all of those receipts just yet. But these are things like travel, getting my nails done, certain meals, clothes, products that I'm gonna be reviewing or specifically shooting content in. And a disclaimer for these more fun expenses, the advice varies on what you can write off or not, even amongst accountants. So take it up with yours and know that I've run mine by mine. So all that to say is that I just think that commenting on somebody's income recap video, asking them to reveal their expenses, isn't always the gotcha moment that they think it is. Was that controversial? Okay, now that that's off my chest, let's dive into the evolution of my expenses. Because although for the past 8 years, I've definitely accumulated a lot of costs that seem critical to my own workflow, I wouldn't say not having them is a barrier to entry or even a barrier to making a lot of money. So if you're somebody who's been wanting to take content more seriously, you can start now. There's free tools out there, okay? So I started my content creation journey back in 2016 as a blogger. And when I started, I wanted to start this off as legitimately as possible. So my very first and only investments were to get my website up and running, which cost approximately $200. This involved the purchase of my domain name, comfygirlwithcurls.com, website hosting at the time with Bluehost, and I also purchased like a $50 theme, which is kind of like a base template to build the design of your website off of. Then in 2020, I decided that I wanted to take content more seriously. I decided it was going to make me money, and it did. But I also added a lot more expenses. That year, I ended up making my first $10,000, and I was also working at my 9-to-5. So I felt like I had a lot of disposable income to play with. So I spent about $1,500 on subscriptions. That's not that bad, right? And it didn't hurt that much because I wasn't spending it all at the same time. Like they were kind of spread out throughout the year, like a couple $100 here, $29 there. And that year I also spent about $2,000 in gear. I upgraded from my father-in-law's camera to one that could do video because Reels were all the rage and TikTok was blowing up. I bought a lens and some lighting, all coming to a total of about $3,500. And as time went on and I started making more money, I felt even more confident investing in more gear. So I eventually purchased 3 more lenses. I treated myself to an iPad. I bought some mics, some more lights. I bought a gimbal that still to this day has only been used twice. And I do want to note here that I really did wait to invest in the fancy gear, the fun stuff, the cameras, the little toys, until I had actually started making money. Little flashback to 2020, I bought my camera in September. So at that point, I had already made more than enough to offset that investment. And I think that's just something important to remember for any creators getting into this, that you don't need to go right out the gate and buy a lot of stuff, even though it's very tempting. Phones today, I think I say it in like a million of my videos, but we've reached a point where the quality of them is just gorgeous. Yeah, work with what you got first. Now, my regular recurring business expenses based on 2023 come to a total of, drumroll, $5,000. Is that more or less than you expected? And here's a little breakdown of where this money is all going. So for my website, I have Cloudflare. It's supposed to help speed up my website. I have some of my domains hosted through it. I have SiteGround, where I now host my website instead of Bluehost because it's supposed to be a little bit faster. I have Social Warfare, which is a paid plugin to help sync like a lot of social media features and stats with my blog. KeySearch and Yoast for keyword research and SEO. Deposit Photos for stock imagery. Akismet to block spam comments on my blog. And Tailwind, as you probably know, I love to help me with Pinterest scheduling. Then in the social/video category, I have Artlist. I upgraded this year to Artlist Max. Previously, I was using it just for royalty-free music, so I could use it in my YouTube videos and in sponsored content, but I've since upgraded to give me access to sound effects and stock footage. I have InShot for editing videos on my phone, TubeBuddy to help me with like YouTube video SEO, and I pay for it on both my YouTube channels, even the one that I'm not posting to. That hurts. I have Gling, which is an AI software to help with video editing. I still actually pay for Canva Pro. I'm now an Adobe Express ambassador, so I'm still in the process of migrating a lot of my workflow from Canva to Adobe Express. And I do actually use the entire Adobe suite. So the whole like Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro to edit these videos. And then this one under like socials is so embarrassing. When I looked it up on my little like Apple Store receipts, I almost vomited. I was nauseous. I was paying for TickSave, and it is a software or an app that allows you to download TikTok videos without the watermark. I know that you can now download TikToks within the app before you post them, but sometimes I forget to do that. Or sometimes I want to download an old TikTok. And I knew I was paying for it. I knew it was like kind of unreasonably expensive. It was convenient. I was paying $12.49 a week. that equaled a total of $649. That is embarrassing. That's so unnecessary. Then on the business logistics front, I pay for MailChimp to send out newsletters, QuickBooks to help me send out invoices and track my income expenses. And as I say that, you're probably thinking, well, Kaya, why didn't you use it to track your expenses? You have to go in and actively check off what was a personal expense and what was a business expense. And it just got away from me. So here we are. I pay for a Microsoft 365, I think it's called, so that I can do all of my email through Outlook, but still have it be attached from my domain name. I pay for Zoom so that I can do one-on-one calls. I have an app called OneSec to help curb my social media usage. I have a PO box so that I don't expose my physical address to strangers. In September, when I started getting some more outside help in my business, I paid for a password management service, as well as the paid version of Notion, because you need that to be able to have multiple people access it. And then because I never have enough storage, I pay for Google Drive storage as well as iCloud storage. And I was doing fine with the 2 terabytes for most of the year, but I just had to upgrade to the 6 terabyte version in December. And in case you thought we were done, I do have a couple one-off 2023 expenses to share. I bought a refurbished iMac in 2021. And last year, 2023, I woke up and my computer just wouldn't turn on. Brought it to get checked out and they said it was dead. Sorry, nothing we can do. You didn't have Apple Care. And so I had a very unexpected, upsetting $2,000 expense to replace my computer. I ended up going for the M1 MacBook, which has been a massive workhorse, but yeah, that hurt. And then just some miscellaneous hard drives, mics, and lights. So that brings us to a total of having spent about $7,250 last year on my creator business. I will say I do also always get to write off things like a portion of my rent, my utilities, internet, phone bills, etc. And like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of miscellaneous things in the box of receipts, but they're gonna look a little bit more like travel expenses, Uber rides to events, the wax hair paint, makeup, and fake nails, and other miscellaneous things I purchased in order to make my Halloween costume, which I went all out for so that I could create content about it and make a blog post on it, which I'm still working on. And finally, a little note about taxes. I want to note that I am Canadian and I'm currently registered as a sole proprietor. And the general rule of thumb is to be prepared to give 30% of your earnings back to the government. And I've heard that a lot of Americans follow this rule of thumb as well. But as I mentioned earlier, your expenses do help to lower your reported income, which helps you pay a little bit less. Please do not take any of this as tax advice. I just wanted to shine a little bit of a light on how it all works. The only true advice that I'm giving you is to find an accountant and don't be afraid to shop around for one that works for you. I have some creator friends who have accountants that are really strict and don't seem to understand the job of being a creator. Then there are accountants that seem to draw parallels between taxes of a content creator and the taxes of, say, a performer or actor, where your image is a major part of your business, so you can justify things like facials, nails, and general upkeep. If you made it to the end and don't want the money talk to stop, watch this video next. It outlines the many different ways that creators can diversify their income. Thanks for watching, and until next time.